193 Grove Road in Midlothian, or call 804-378-7889.
WRWK 93.9, theworkfm.org, is grateful for our sponsors, and the following brief poem is offered as hearty thanks to Dr. Walter Coppage, English professor emeritus at VCU, who has been an enlightening and inspiring teacher to thousands of students over his long career and a supporter of WRWK. The Coming of Wisdom with Time by William Butler Yeats. Though leaves are many, the root is one. Through all the lying days of my youth, I swayed my leaves and flowers in the sun. Now I may wither into the truth.
We are WRWK LP 93.9 FM, the Work FM, licensed to Midlothian and serving Chesterfield, Henrico, Richmond, Goochland, and Hanover.
Thanks for listening to WRWK FM 93.9 The Work. Join me, Leslie, every other Wednesday for Her Human Equal Rights with the Focus on Her. My show focuses on human rights and their impact on women. Please join me, and thanks again for listening to WRWK 93.9 FM The Work.
And now, without further ado, here is
the Progressive Soapbox, Jamal Thomas. How are you doing today?
Not bad. Yourself?
I'm doing all right. Guys, this is the voice in your ear for the next 2 hours, Jamal Thomas Radio Hour. I hope you guys are doing all right on your drive time back home from your day at the office. So what's going on today? Are there any kind of announcements that we have for the radio station that you would like to give?
Well, there's a couple of things I think were worth mentioning, but of course, I'm a fan of this place, so I think we're all under-celebrated. I'd like to mention that Affordable Home Inspection is supporting WRWK. And Affordable Home Inspection, in case you haven't heard of it, they have over 15 years of experience. Jeremy Rowan, owner and master inspector of Affordable Home Inspection, offers insured and bonded home inspections, including heating systems, air conditioning units, roof condition, electrical service, and interior structure elements. He serves Richmond, Charlottesville, Fredericksburg, Petersburg, Williamsburg, and Alexandria, which is a big territory. More information can be gotten at affordablehomeInSPECT.com. So, shout out to Jeremy. So, over to you.
So, thank you very much. Guys, I am Jamal Thomas. Like I said before, I'm going to be the voice in your ear for the next 2 hours, and I hope you guys have had an awesome day up to this point, and not even just up to this point, in general. I'm not going to add a caveat behind you guys having a great day, and I hope you guys continue to have a great day as you listen to this voice on your drive time hour. Interesting thing to note over the weekend, and I don't know if you've noticed it, recent polls coming out, the Monmouth poll, showing that, one, Bernie Sanders has taken the lead. Now, part of that has to do with events like this. Listen to this for the moment. This is one Joe Biden. This was when Joe Biden was in the lead. And I keep saying over and over again, how on earth can this guy be more electable when he seems to be having sundown syndrome, essentially sundown Biden? That as the day wears on and as you get further into the day, Biden's cognitive faculties seem to take a hit. It seemed to go less and less and less. And on one campaign stage after the next, he goes into these incoherent ramblings. The other day, he went into this radically incoherent speech talking about Obama being assassinated and him going to school. Off the bat, you shouldn't even be talking about that. But the fact of the matter is, it was incoherent as he was going about his way talking about it. He keeps calling Theresa May Margaret Thatcher. He didn't necessarily know that the El Paso and Daytona shootings happened in those particular places, even a few days after those particular things happened. And even the deaths of King and Kennedy, attaching it to his graduation, getting all of it wrong by a factor of 10 years. Sundown Biden. How often, how many times can you go from stage to stage to stage and do one cognitive screw up after the next and still retain this notion of electability. And the wild part is he has started to lean into electability because he realizes that the reason why people are accruing to him are policy. I have nothing to do with policy. I think he's electable because I think he's electable. It's like voting for air. Like, meaning the reality of I think he's electable has nothing underlying it. And from the standpoint of Sanders, when Sanders had a bad debate performance, Sanders' support didn't go anywhere because the reason why Sanders people were supporting him was stable and stick-to-itive. It was policy.
Mhm.
I want certain things espoused upon the world. And if my guy doesn't get out there and fight ferociously for it one time, that's okay. I still love my guy because I know my guy's pushing for those things. In Biden's case, look, I don't really care about the policy thing. I just want him to win because I think he can beat Trump. It's like people are so terrified that they're willing to give up any notion of what they want espoused upon the larger world in a policy sense, meaning a better world. They're willing to put that to the wayside and say, I just need him to beat Trump. I just need him to beat Trump.
He's my man.
Yeah, he's my man because he can beat Trump. Well, problem is when you go on one campaign stage after the next, and it doesn't seem like you could put two thoughts together, and it seems like they're an early onset of senility. Here's the catch. The debates with Trump are not going to happen just before noon. They're going to take place at night. And
Yep.
if Biden is having trouble just on the campaign trail, we still have a year to go. And if he's having trouble right now on the campaign trail where people associated with him are like he needs to take more naps, then maybe he's not up to the task of being in that office.
Maybe not.
Does
Yeah.
he believe that all problems associated that the president is going to have to deal with is only going to take place before noon? I guarantee you it is not. It is
Nope.
not.
Nope.
And if he is not up to the challenge now, right now, while we're on the campaign trail, when he can't put two thoughts together, that's a problem. And that should be something that people honestly engage and say, okay, maybe he's not our guy. I still say Joe Biden's wife doesn't love him. Because if Joe Biden's wife did love him, she's a doctor, she would have tapped him on the shoulder and says, all right, Joe, I'm going to get you some applesauce. Let's get out of here. We don't need to be on this campaign trail. I don't doubt that Joe Biden wants to be president. I don't doubt it at all. He's been running for president for 40 years. And in that entire time, he has been failing the entire time. And there was always something to take him out of contention. And those people during those generations were bright enough to know this is not the guy that we wanted in that office. Now, people are so desperate to get rid of Trump that they're willing to throw away a prime opportunity for things that they can actually get espoused upon the world. The party on the left, meaning the Democratic Party and the elements of the left, have these notions of what they want espoused upon the world. Medicare for all. We want to ensure everybody's health care. We want to expand Social Security because people who give their brains and energies and muscles for the entirety of their life shouldn't retire in vulnerability. We want to ensure that that's not the case. We want to ensure that people can go to school. You know, these are just primary things that the American public, for the most part, agrees with. And particularly the Democratic Party agrees with. And yet, Joe Biden doesn't. Meaning Joe Biden, when he runs against Medicare for all, he is literally running against the party. But he believes that electability matters more. Joe Biden is wrong. And what the polling is showing is Joe Biden is wrong. And to put this in real terms, this is Joe Biden at a campaign stop. At this campaign stop, Joe Biden literally does not know where he is. And I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that in very real, literal terms. Joe Biden, in this campaign stop, is in New Hampshire. He's in New Hampshire. Listen to what he says. Joe Biden at a campaign stop in New Hampshire said this.
Look, what's not Bishop team? I've been there a number of times. Last time was, I think, all the way back in 2014. But I've been here before that. I love this place. Look, what's not to like about Vermont? That's the beauty of it. What a neat town.
You're not in Vermont, Joe. You're not in Vermont. This is what I mean. Joe Biden's wife doesn't love him. If this was my wife, if she would have heard me messing up, like just outright cognitive glitches in one campaign. These videos are every day. They're every day. If she would have heard that, like she says, oh my God, my husband doesn't even know where he is. She would have right there. She would have stopped me right there. She would just say, come on, Jamal, let's go home. Let's go home. I'm gonna get you some ice cream. We're gonna watch some old Soul Train flicks. Yeah, I'm gonna let you watch Star Trek. We're gonna watch Star Trek together. Let's get you off this campaign trail. That's what she would have said, because she would have loved me more than the need to be first lady. That's what would have happened.
Yeah.
But that's not what's happening. However, on the positive side, despite the feelings that Joe Biden's wife might have for him, the American public have started to notice. And the question that I asked the other day, how long can electability last in the face of somebody who is having cognitive malfunctions, mental slowdowns, lapses, just outright glitches? He is a shadow of his former self. Even the arguments from the standpoint of political acumen. Nobody in their right mind running in a Democratic primary where 90% of African Americans vote Democrat. And in that particular primary, with that much weight from the standpoint of one of the tribal races in a sense, for him to raise the hands of a segregationist as the height of civility. That makes no sense. That is politically tone deaf at best and a certain degree of hubris at worst. But it also gets across this thing that for him, he just wants to be president. It doesn't dig into him. When Sanders gets out there, it digs into him. And there's a reason it digs into him, because at the end of the day, he was a radical. I used the Django example. Django, like in the film, he was a slave and then he gets free. And what does Django, the first thing Django does? He puts on this outright flaming suit. Like he is like bright. And he's in the middle of slavery. All these other blacks don't even have clothes on, like barely have clothes. They have rags and whatnot. And Django's on a horse and this zoot suit of sorts. Now, you might look at them and be like, why on earth would this guy put on a zoot suit? But put yourself in his position for the moment. Rappers who are dirt poor their entire life, they get their first $1 million, and what do? They blow it on a house, they blow it on women, and they blow it on this new ride, and all of their money is gone. And oh, look at me in this car, I'm styling. Look at my tennis. I paid $1,000 for these shoes that does nothing else than anything else. And people are like, God, man, they're wasting their money. Why are they wasting their money away? That makes no sense. It makes all the sense in the world. These people were in a perpetual sense of lack and vulnerability for years on end, for decades on end. It is the world that they knew. It is the world they understood. And in that moment, when that lack goes away, what do? You gorge. I'm starving. I'm gorging. I'm going to get more in this. I'm going to go overboard with this. There's a certain level of insecurity that's associated with this, to which they're dealing with. Same thing with Sanders. You had somebody who was put to the edges of the political space. He was a radical. He was a socialist. The guy, he was outlier. And then in 2016, he catches fire. And it's like, oh, my God. All of these things that the neoliberals have told me forever, that the moderates, that the conservative members of the Democratic Party, the established wing of the party has told me that this is not happy, nobody wants this is not successful, there's no way you can run like this will not be popular. And what do you know? People are feeling the burn. And what does he do? He goes for the rafters. So in this race, when he gets the opportunity, this is not a race where he's like, I think Hillary Clinton is going to win, so I don't want to necessarily ding her too much, so I'm going to go to, no. This is a race where he thinks, this is my turn. I opened this space.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the one that created this gap. And in creating this gap, I'm going to knock it to the rafters because I only get 8 years to do it, and I'm going to gorge. So
make it count, yeah.
So he puts like 5 policies out, all of which are transformational on everything from criminal justice to Medicare for all, to climate, like across the board, radical transformation of the American population to the tune of working towards this notion of the 99%. He's talking about a transformational policy. He tries to knock it to the rafters. It makes all the sense in the world. I want to read the polling to you. Sanders is in the #1 spot in the new Monmouth poll. Monmouth poll is an amazing A-rated poll, national poll, that is not like a CNN poll where CNN only talks to the elderly and then come up with some kind of math in order to figure out what the youth vote might be. No, they do this in a real scientific way. The Democrat-approved poll, meaning this is one of those polls that they use to determine whether you get on the debate stage. Sanders, #1, up by 6 points. Warren, #1 also, up by 5. Biden, '3, down 13.
Oops.
Down 13. When I was reading Kamala Harris's polls, and I was like, wow, I didn't think people could drop 12 points. And what do you know? Kamala Harris has been bested by Joe Biden in how fast a person can fail the moment people say, I don't think this guy has all of his marbles.
Oops.
There's several cards missing in this deck.
Yeah.
There's a tire not on this car. There's a hubcap missing. I have all sorts of these. But you get my point. There's something fundamentally missing with sundown Biden, and the public has started to notice. I want to read the polls to you. This is Monmouth University poll, and it's not Monmouth, by the way, just Monmouth. One of the other national polls that came out showing Biden still in 1, but Sanders was like in 2, but like 2 points or 2 or 3 points in striking distance, meaning within an error Think of error. This is when Biden was at 20 points at one point. He was up that high, and he's fallen that fast.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Let me read this to you because I want to show you how bad this is if you're looking from the standpoint of Joe Biden's camp. And there's a reason why Joe Biden's camp started to stress electability, because what they realized was that people weren't going to them for policy. Once they understood it, you got Jill Biden coming out with a little video saying, hey, you may not like my husband's policies, but he's electable. That's literally what she was arguing. You may like him on healthcare, you may not like him on climate, but he's electable. Joe Biden comes out with a video saying that he's more electable, saying, look at the polls, look at the polls. The problem is, if you have to do that, then people also are going to notice that, well, Sanders has the exact same rating against Trump in those polls, literally. Meaning, if you are more electable and the polls are showing that Sanders and Biden has the exact same thing, then maybe you're not more electable at all. I mean, maybe we can just go to the guy who is not having the cognitive lapses on every stage, that is very clear in what he wants from the standpoint and the vision of the country, and doesn't have to have people to say, you need to take more naps. We can go to that guy. Electability has nothing behind it. And understand what that means, by the way. If you elect somebody who is literally trying to win on this notion of electability, any notion of policy goes by the wayside because you didn't vote for him for policy. In fact, you're essentially going back to the same thing that you've always gone back to, where you just put somebody in that office because you want to keep the Republicans at bay. You have an opportunity. This is an interregnum. There is a crisis of leadership. And you have this opportunity to finally get something that you actually want, as opposed to getting something just because you're terrified of the other guy. Let me read this. This is Monmouth polling. Biden has suffered across-the-board decline in his support since June. He's lost ground with white Democrats from 32% to 18%, voters of color from 33% to 19%, among voters without a college degree, 35% to 18%, and college graduates, 28% to 20%, with both men, 38% to 24%, and women, 29% to 16%, and among voters under 50, 21% to 6%, as well as voters aged 50 and over, 42% to 33%. Oh, there's more. There's more. Because it even goes, liberal voters are starting to cast about a candidate they can identify with. Moderate voters who have been paying less attention. Essentially, there is nowhere that Biden could escape. Everywhere that Biden went, he was touched, and he was touched harshly. He couldn't escape anything. It's like, anywhere you go, I'm going to put my hands on you. And the wild part about this is, it was given over evenly to Sanders and Warren. Hence, Biden losing 13 points, and Sanders and Warren going up 13 points. Isn't that a beautiful thing? People are like, yeah, man, you guys have a point about this guy losing his brains. And here's the catch. When the issue is electability, it's a fickle mistress. When Kamala Harris takes Biden down, what happens? Kamala Harris pops up in the polls all the way up to the third spot. And people are like, wow, she seems really electable. She seems presidential. And then what happens? In the very next debate, Tulsi Gabbard puts a knife in her, and she plummets right off the bat, deflates. And what do they, because why? It's a fickle mistress. There was nothing to base it on. It was purely optics. And in the case of Biden, electability entirely depends upon the subjective belief of what do I think the outside world is, that is subjective to the individual and could be magnificently wrong. The same people who think Biden is electable thought Hillary Clinton was going to win that race in spades. They thought it was going to be a landslide. Those same people thought Trump was working with the Russians. All of that was wrong. Have a modicum of doubt in the sense of this notion of electability when your prior guesses were wrong. Biden plummets and implodes entirely. I love it. It's a beautiful thing.
There had to be some train wrecks on the way to this next election.
Biden was up a year out. And I said a long time, I said, there is no way he makes it through a Democratic primary. I mean, I don't know how. Like, the Democratic Party, and from the standpoint of the primary voters tend to be more to a particular area anyway, because it's the base, it's the primary. And Biden, who is an old-style Democrat with a record that is utterly and entirely abysmal. I mean, throwing black bodies in prison, like going along with this thing with Strom Thurmond, in the sense of, trying to, how to put more and more people in prison, and then to come out with a prison plan that repudiates the entirety of his record. I mean, like,
Yeah.
All of it is atrocious. Biden couldn't even come up with a climate plan, and then he plagiarized in that climate plan, because at the end of the day, Biden didn't care about this stuff. Biden just wanted to be president. And I think it shows in one thing after the next. Look, at the end of the day, he's imploded. I said he wasn't going to make it. He didn't make it. Now, my thought of him not making it was different, though. I was somewhat wrong, so I can't necessarily chest stump the entire way through. I thought he wasn't going to make it just because I thought his policies were going to be so out of alignment with the rest of the left, like meaning the primary voters. People want Medicare for all. Biden was against it. People want the radical climate change action. Biden was against it. People want, this expansion of Social Security from college for everybody. Biden is against those things. And so it's like, how are you going to win in a primary when you're against those things? So you have a record that's decidedly against those things. And even if you come out and says, okay, now I'm for those things, nobody believes it. And so the issue for the most people wasn't so much that people believed that Biden was going to do it or not. And I think Biden realized that nobody really believes me on this stuff. They're just voting for me because they think I can be Trump.
Electable.
Yeah, they're electable. And again, the electability thing doesn't mean anything, at least not in real terms. I mean, it has to be tethered to something, right? It can't just be the guy's electable because I think the guy's electable. I mean, ultimately, what they're talking about is how does he compare to Trump, and who can we sell to people outside of this particular party for them to bite onto Trump? And the problem with that is massively subjective. It has to be tethered to something. You can look at the polling, you can look at all that stuff. And at the end of the day, there's something to be said for choosing the guy that you want in the context of the guy being electable. So don't misunderstand me. Biden in this case, I'm sorry, we're a year out. And I didn't think he was going to measure up, and he did.
Self-eliminated.
Yeah, he literally self-eliminated. I thought he was going to be eliminated just because his policies were going to be out of line. He was eliminated because he had cognitive glitches the entire way through. Sundown Biden. Sundown Biden. And I don't mean that in the negative. I just mean that in the objective sense of the word, that the guy can't put sentences together as the day wears on.
Yeah, better this than in 2020.
Yes. I mean, honestly, do you really want this guy on a debate stage with Trump? He'll get bullied.
He'd stomp him.
He get bullied. I mean, look at what happened with Kamala Harris when she went after Biden. I mean, he was defenseless. And, you look at what happened with Tulsi Gabbard afterwards, meaning all of the ammunition that Tulsi Gabbard had at her disposal, all this was true. And Biden, having access to that stuff, could not use it. Like, he didn't have it at his disposal to be able to get off to use it. He didn't have the political acumen there. This was a different guy that was in 2008. This is a different guy that was in 2012. He did not have the skills. Same thing with Cory Booker. Cory Booker bullied him. And, it's like, how does Cory Booker bully anybody? And yet, Biden didn't have the political acumen to deal with the fact that he was getting bullied by these guys, even though he has all the ammunition in the world, particularly against somebody like Kamala Harris. It wasn't in him. He just didn't have it. And if he was on that debate stage with Trump, who, mind you, has no issue with being hypocritical in it. You've been putting black bodies in jail, Biden. I've been letting them out. And Biden is like, what? What are you talking about? Are you serious? Like, is this where you want to go? Yes, that's exactly where he would go. You voted for the Iraq war, and I was against it. Look at what I did to Jeb Bush. And Joe Biden is like, are you serious? Do we honestly have any thought that Trump would lie or be massively hypocritical when he's punching the other guy? No, he's not. He doesn't match up well in that sense. I want the uber capitalist versus the guy that calls himself a socialist. And let's have a real race between the left and the right, where there is a clear division between what they want and what we want. That's what I want. I don't want the milquetoast Biden advocating for milquetoast policies that he doesn't actually even believe in. No, I want the guy that really believes what he wants. And when he's on that debate stage with Trump, he sticks it in his face. You said you were going to do this and you didn't do that. You said you were going to, have every big, beautiful healthcare. You tried to strip healthcare away from millions. You said you weren't going to lower taxes on people like yourself. You increased taxes on the middle class while lowering it for people of your class and people like you. I want them to hit them across the board. You said you were going to raise the minimum wage to $10 an hour. You didn't do it at all. Why? How are you saying you're representing the middle class and you didn't do these things?
The voters.
That's what I want. That's what I want. So let's see. Do we have any announcements that we need to go? Support for WRWK is supported by Thrifty Quaker, located in Midlothian Square Shopping Center at the corner of Midlothian Turnpike and Coalfield. The Thrifty Quaker sells donated items to support the work of 12 varying, mostly local charities each year. This month, the Thrifty Quaker, to support the Carol Adams Foundation, whose mission is to provide emergency assistance to women, men, and children who are victims of domestic violence. Information can be found at thriftyquaker.com. Guys, this is WRWK. You guys can call in at 464-1089, 464-1089. Also, underwriting, if you guys are interested in ensuring that this content, meaning my words, the thing that I am saying in this particular perspective or the perspective of other shows on this particular channel, and you want to ensure that this channel can grow and expand, please consider underwriting this particular content. More information can be found at WRWK website. I'm sorry, the Work FM and on our website.
Yes, the Facebook is the Work FM, and the organization website is theworkfm.org or com, for that matter, although we're not commercial.
Yeah. So moving on from the complete, entire, outright, beautiful implosion of the Biden camp, I don't quote Neera Tanden often. You know who Neera Tanden is, right? Neera Tanden is an old Clinton ally. She's works for Center for American Progress. That's her organization. That's her bag. That's the thing that she does, and she essentially advocates for third way policy type positions, aggressively and annoyingly so. She is one of those people who tries to stem the tide of Sanders to ensure that more people like Clinton, Obama, and the third way Democrats can get into power while keeping out the types of Sanders type.
The real progressives.
Yeah, the unwashed masses.
Yes.
The crowds.
Yes.
So Neera Tanden at one point assaulted Bernie Sanders' campaign manager. This is real.
Really?
Now she says it was a push. Well, long as we admit that there was contact that was being made. Now the reason she hit him is because he asked her, Hillary Clinton, a question about the Iraq war vote. That she was like, how dare you ask her about this atrocious, abominable, embarrassing vote. This is horrible. Don't do that. We're trying to protect Clinton in this case.
Play fair. Yeah.
MSNBC often brings her on and also often asks her questions about Bernie Sanders without necessarily mentioning that she got $10,000 from Jeff Bezos, despite the fact that she would comment on Sanders and his attacks on Jeff Bezos. Like, a lot of the stuff is a little dicey. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because Neera Tanden has a quote where she makes the point that says campaigns that are doing well, that are doing well in the polls and that are doing great in regards to outreach and everything else are light, happy, and jovial. They're beautiful things. They are stars in the sky. If you looked at them at a distance, they will glow and they will radiate like a black body radiation. They are gorgeous things. They're beautiful. They exude a certain degree of radiance that get across something is going well. You don't have to ask them, just the very act of watching them gets it across. The same thing is true, however, in somewhat of a diametrically opposite way for campaigns that are not doing well. Those campaigns are angry and miserly and bitter and sometimes hysterical in the way that they go out and attack the other campaigns. I say this to say this. When you're looking at the Sanders campaign and what they've been putting out and everything else, and you're looking at the polling, and you check online and Twitter and everything else, those people are on cloud 9. They float when they walk. When they talk, there's a certain glow about the words that comes out of their mouth. But the same thing is not true for other campaigns. And if you have to push this argument of electability, something is wrong. I want to transition, though, to propaganda. Propaganda is an interesting thing. We tend to think of things like Pravda and propaganda, think of Nazis, Russia's, these totalitarian governments that put out stuff that is not necessarily true to gaslight and change the public's perspective on various events. The same thing happens in the United States, however. There is no such thing as objectivity as an absolute. There is only perspectives and where you're coming from. It is something to be said that truth is one of those things insofar as it pertains to the objective and natural world. If I say I think capitalism is awesome, well, that's fine. You as an individual can think pretty much anything you want. And if you think that's a better system based on the negatives and the positives associated with it in the world that we have, then I can't necessarily go after you for that. That's your choice. If you're a plutocrat and you're making $1 billion, then you may think capitalism is awesome because it has allowed you to be in the position that you are currently in. However, the moment that you add an objective world to that, then the subjectivity of it kind of slides away, and I can compare what you say with the objective world. MSNBC and CNN is a propaganda outlet. I've said it on more than one occasion. They have a clear bias in this race, that bias being against Sanders. I don't begrudge them for it. I understand where they're coming from for it. I only begrudge them in the sense of pretending that they are objective media. They are not. I said this over and over again. I showed it last week. I'm going to show another instance in propaganda at work, MSNBC, CNN. These are billionaires paying millionaires to go out and give you a particular perspective of the world. They are telling you, they are giving you a narrative. And you can say, well, dude, you're doing the same thing. But the difference is I am telling you what is literally taking place behind the scenes. Whether you're talking about Cenk Uygur, whether you're talking about Crystal Ball, or whether you're talking about Ed Schultz, all of these people work for MSNBC. All of these people talked about control from the top being exerted on the stories that they wanted to put forth. They did not have entire editorial control in regards to what they want to say. And if they go beyond the rails, the network will crash them. That's what happens. Do you believe that that's different on Fox News? And do you believe that's different on CNN? And if so, why? Do you honestly believe that people who are making $20 million a year can understand what it's like to be perpetually vulnerable in a day-to-day basis? And that a candidate who's coming out, who's talking about the interests of the 99%, that they would get it in a flesh-to-bone way, especially since what he's talking about is not their priorities at all. Those are the majority of the people. But they fit firmly within the 1%. They deal with politicians who fit firmly within the 1%. And both, be it media or the political class, are being paid by billionaires to essentially give you a story. Do you realize 90% of the elections are won by the side with the most cash? Literally. Literally. In a system like that, where 90% of what you choose to run your government, when 90% is chosen by the side with the most cash, can you honestly say that that's a democracy? Can you even say it's a representative government? You don't even really need to do the election. Just do 9-1, the side with the most cash wins, and you would be right 90% of the time. I'm sorry, that's atrocious. 75% of the time congressmen spend doing business, it's calling for cash. When 90% of the elections are decided with the most cash, and when 75% of the time Republicans and Democrats spend are begging for cash, who do you think they are going to represent? Naturally, if it was you, when the incentives, who do you think they're going to represent when the overwhelming majority of the time that they are in operation, they are begging for cash? And you can see the absolute results at the end, where that cash makes the determining factor of who wins 9-1. Why are you okay with that system? Like, even if you say, I think capitalism is awesome, and you say, yeah, rah, democracy, why are you okay with that system? 9-1. It's just, look, who has the most cash? They're not insane. They're not crazy. This has nothing to do with right and wrong. This has everything to do with action and consequence. The action is, I need as much money as I can in order to win the race. And you may have some people who say, okay, I can work around the edges. I can be incrementalist. This is the system to which we have. This is the best that I can do in this particular system. You can have that particular rationalization, but I just want to be clear that the system works this way. All incentives in this process go towards, if I want to win, I need cash to do it. And if I need cash to do it, who am I going to work with? Who am I going to ingratiate myself towards? The unwashed masses or the people who are giving me cash? You have dollars or you have pitchforks. And up to this point, you've only had dollars. And fact of the matter is, they're not insane for going towards those dollars. Because if they don't even have a chance of winning in the first place. Your system is corrupt in and of itself in the way that it just works. Of the candidates that are in a race, Sanders is the one that's not taking cash. My point is this. In a system like that, media and politics, for the most part, are functioning almost fused together. And media has certain people who they prefer, people who would ensure that the system stays the way it is. And fact of the matter is, the media makes that choice over and over again. And I would argue discredits itself in pushing that propaganda, especially when that propaganda is so over the top. And it should be called out. This is MSNBC. Now, I've shown these clips before. Not this clip. I haven't shown this clip before. But this is actually, this is CNN. This is David Axelrod. Now, David Axelrod is Obama's old manager. David Axelrod brings Sanders onto the show. And he asks Bernie Sanders, listen to what he asked Bernie Sanders. Because this is awesome. This is CNN. All right, I'm going to flip this over so my audience be able to see it. And for my YouTube audience, if you are having difficulty seeing this, I will upload the video after I have a copy of it. This is Axelrod. Axelrod brings on one Bernie Sanders. Now, I've showed you the polls that Sanders is literally in number 1. And even before that, Sanders was like in number 2. And the entirety of this election, Sanders has at least been in the number 2 spot. I mean, you might have some state polls where he might, be 3, but for the most part, he's always been in the number 2 spot for the entirety of this election. Sanders on CNN, a network that hates his guts. I've shown it before, but Sanders on CNN. Listen to Axelrod. Come on. I'm sorry, guys. YouTube is a thing about it. Here we go. All right, let's try it again.
Okay, but I know that you would like to see it. Just happened to bring it with me. Incredible that you have this just happened. Yes. This is showing that since the last debate, we have the best moral polling that ever came. So there are bad polls, there are good polls. Yes.
Yeah, it's shocking that he has the polls with him, which means, to some degree, that's even more embarrassing. Because what that means is Bernie Sanders says, I'm going to go on a show with Axelrod on CNN. CNN hates my guts. Axelrod is an old Obama guy who's just a Democratic operative, so he's probably going to be a hack. And because he's probably going to be a hack, I need to have polls with him because he's going to try to smear me with nonsense. And so I want to make sure that I can knock down his nonsense. Oh, it's shocking that you have your polls. Yes, I have my polls with me because I couldn't trust you to be honest about this process. That's embarrassing. And then the best part is he looks as, oh, wow. So you're showing that what I was saying was propaganda and nonsense. Listen to this. I mean, he's talking about Sanders being in the 4th place in the polling. What is he talking about? And I showed you the Monmouth poll that shows Sanders at number 1, but there were other polls showing Sanders at like number 2 or number 2, literally within striking distance. And just to make this point that much more crystal clear, CNN's own poll, the audience can see this, CNN's own poll, the network to which Axelrod is on, as he's saying this to Sanders, has Sanders at number 2. At number 2. David Axelrod is on CNN talking to Bernie Sanders, and CNN has a poll with Bernie Sanders at number 2, and Axelrod says, looks like you slipped to number 4, buddy. Sanders has to show him, no, Axelrod, that is not true. I have not slipped to number 4. I am in the number 2 spot, and I've gained more momentum than everybody else. And I wish you would have said, if you would have looked at your own polls on your own network, you would have seen that I'm number 2. Are you serious? Like, this is what I mean when I say propaganda. It's one thing if you say, okay, you slipped in some states to number 3, but there is no context of number 4 at all. And again, the Monmouth poll that comes out like a day later makes it that much more ludicrous of what David Axelrod is saying. That's called propaganda. That's called gaslighting. What Axelrod wanted to do is go before a CNN audience and say, look, guys, he's not as popular as you guys think he is. When he's having those barn burner speeches, when he's having those massive crowds, I mean, he's falling in the number. Yeah, that's not true. That's not true. Flat out, not true. As an absolute, not true. Axelrod, CNN, is lying. They are gaslighting you. There's a weird thing in human psychology. There are receptor neurons in your head. Do you know what that is? It's like in your brain, when human beings are looking at something, let's say you're watching a movie, and the character in the movie, let's say Bambi gets shot, and there'll be some people in the audience that cries. Why? It's a cartoon. The cartoons, something happens to the cartoon. It's fake cartoon blood. Why? Because human beings are looking at what is taking place from an emotional sense, and the things in their head is reflecting what is taking place from their eyesight, meaning they're reflecting the behaviors that are around them, and there's an emotional effect that comes from that reflection of behaviors. There are also certain tests that takes place with people wanting to be part of a crowd. I can't think of the name, Stofield test or something like that. But for example, if you have 10 people in a group, one of those people is an experiment, and he doesn't know he's part of that experiment. And you tell those people, look, just which one is the longest line? And let's say that one who's not part of the experiment, who doesn't know he's part of the experiment, is the last guy. A is clearly the longer line, and everybody in the group says C. That guy looks and says, well, I know A is the longer line, but I'm going to go with C anyway because these people clearly know something that I don't know. Do you know 30% of the time people will choose a wrong value because the group goes with that wrong value, even if that person knows that that value is wrong? It's the way people operate. When CNN and media is putting out a narrative that is false and is gaslighting people, they're doing so because they know that effect exists. They know they can't get everybody, but there's a probability of people, roughly 30%, that would say, well, Sanders is not doing well, and I want to be lumped in with part of the larger group, and so I'm going to choose this other person. They want to be part of the in crowd. And so if CNN can make it look like Sanders is not doing well, then to them, it allows them to say, hey, but this other person, Warren, is doing awesome. You should choose and look at Warren. MSNBC does the exact same thing. They are gaslighting, and they are not being honest. This is propaganda. I want to show you one more while we're on this thing. That's CNN. I want to jump over to MSNBC, which is another propaganda outlet in this context. This is MSNBC. Listen to what is taking place. They are having a conversation about the election. And MSNBC is essentially pushing Warren. They're pushing Warren hard. I want you to hear what goes on for political discourse on MSNBC because, again, it's disturbing that this goes over the airwaves day after day after day. Listen to this.
This distinction is going to be made on the debate stage in Detroit.
Well, I mean, look, first of all, I think what the first debate showed us is that they do make a difference, right? I mean, we've already had at least one candidate drop out. So, you know, it feels like this is going to narrow it further and further. I think, you know, having Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren next to each other will really highlight, because for me, as, you know, again, I'm not the political analyst here, but just as a woman, probably considered a somewhat moderate Democrat, Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl, and I can't even identify.
That wasn't very nice.
No, and I need to hear it because I can't hear what she's saying.
Oh, is this finally take effect?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, it's playing in the radio speaker.
Oh, stop playing here, not earphones.
Oh, can you hear me?
Back in just a moment. Mike Namely, thank
Okay, I hope you guys heard that. And I might need to play it one more time just to make sure that the playback was correct and sufficient. But essentially, what you guys should have heard was a woman on NBC saying Bernie Sanders makes her skin crawl. That's extraordinary. And she says he's anti-woman, but she doesn't know why he's anti-woman. Like she says, I don't know why he makes my skin crawl. He just does. And then she moves on to, I think he's anti-woman and her, you know, him on the debate stage. Let me play one more time, just make sure. And again, my YouTube audience, if you guys are listening, I apologize if there's any weird.
I'm looking at the speaker.
Okay, I apologize if there's any weirdness on this front. I'm going to play it one more time, and so you guys can hear it. I want to make sure you guys can hear it because this is an awesome clip, and it kind of hits at what I'm talking about.
in Detroit.
Well, I mean, look, first of all, I think what the first debate showed us is that they do make a difference, right? I mean, we've already had at least one candidate drop out. So, you know, it feels like this is going to narrow it further and further. I think, you know, having Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren next to each other will really highlight, because for me, as, you know, again, I'm not the political analyst here, but just as a woman, probably considered a somewhat moderate Democrat, Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl, and I can't even identify for you what exactly it is, but.
So just so we're clear, we're on MSNBC. They're giving their own political, you know, they're trying to give political coverage. And she says literally that the man, that guy, makes my skin crawl. Like that's a certain vitriolic, hatred-filled statement. And it's like, okay, well, why? I mean, he may make your skin crawl for a reason. I don't particularly like Trump. I give you all sorts of reasons why I don't particularly like Trump. So fair enough. Is what it is. It's your opinion. But why? You should at least be able to give me a why. I mean, why is a big deal. Why would explain and give context to the prior statement that is pretty, you know, vicious.
Sorry.
I mean, because think about it. Think of all the things that make your skin crawl as a person. And you're saying this other individual makes my, I hate him so much, he makes my skin crawl. All right, why? I have no reason as to why that I could give you. That's amazing. That's amazing.
And they gave her airtime.
They gave her airtime. Not just airtime, they'll bring it back. There's more.
I see him as sort of a not pro-woman candidate. And so having the two of them there, like, I don't understand young.
He makes my skin crawl, and I see him as an anti-woman. Do you know, you might not have known this, but I read polls, you know, continuously because it's for the show and whatnot. Sanders support is non-white, mostly women. Isn't that interesting? The guy, and even before that point, it was 50-50, meaning his supporters were literally split 50-50 between men and women. But people of color, many of which were women. tends to be a sport base. Warren's is mostly white, degree, like 4-year degree and that type of stuff. But Sanders are usually poor workers, non-white, mostly women. Mm-hmm. Like this is so out of line with objective reality. Like, this is kind of my point. If she says Sanders make my skin crawl, okay, that might be a flat fact. She may dislike him that much. And so it's to each his own. But the moment you add something that is part of objective reality that can gauge whether or not what you're saying is true and what she's saying is ludicrous, just like what's his name? Axelrod was saying was ludicrous. Like, it makes no sense. What they're saying is hyperbolic and nonsensical. I mean, mind you, this is the Russia Gate network. There's one more that I want to add to this before I move on from this particular topic. Another, MSNBC. I mean, this is MSNBC. My contention is that both of these are propaganda outlets. You've heard CNN, meaning Axelrod. You've heard MSNBC, and I've shown other clips on MSNBC that were problematic. Listen to this one. Here's another one dealing with this notion of objective reality versus not. This is another person, MSNBC. Listen to what she says. Let's see if I can make that.
Things that are wrong structurally in this country, and then he stops talking. And I'm always listening for solutions and specifics. Elizabeth Warren does not stop talking. She says, and here is how I'm going to fix it, and here's my plan to fix it. Kamala Harris also has a verbal tick where she says, I don't want to hear you talking about what all the problems are. Tell me what you're going to do about it. And I think that that's the difference in this campaign. And Joe Biden.
You heard that, right? That's the difference in this campaign. Because Elizabeth Warren has all of these policies, and Kamala Harris, who literally dropped 12 points after having a knife put in her by Tulsi Gabbard, where she stood on the debate stage completely defenseless and proud of keeping a man in prison on death row when she knew the guy was innocent. Those people have policy proposals that they want to put forth. But that Bernie Sanders, he just tells us all the problems. Now, this is literally in the context where Sanders, the past 2 weeks, have been releasing radical transformations, policies, Medicare for all, prescription drug bill, college for all, Social Security expansion, estate tax, clean water for all, Wall Street speculation tax, $15 a mile minimum wage. This is climate bill, meaning a $16 trillion climate proposal. All of these things were proposals that he put out, radical transformations, be it criminal justice, be it healthcare, be it climate. What is she talking about? What is she talking about? Like, honestly, like in real terms, Bernie Sanders was literally putting out radical proposals to transform this society across the board. Hey, you don't like the criminal justice thing? We don't either. We have several proposals. Here's our criminal justice plan. It is a radical transformation of our criminal justice system. Here it is. Bam, black and white, Bernie Sanders. Medicare for all. We're going to transform our medical system to ensure that each and every person in this country can get health care because we are an evolved society and we can afford it. And as a society that can afford it, we get to the point where we say, look, as an evolved society, a rich society, it is immoral to walk around where there's some people who don't have health care. Not just that, it's expensive to maintain the system that we have. We have the worst of both worlds. He comes out with a radical transformation of that. College, this notion of getting rid of college loans and getting rid of college debt. That's a radical transformation of that particular system. And guess what? All of them are popular. All of them are popular. Bernie Sanders gained 12 points just on the college thing alone from the standpoint of people who are 18 to 30 years old. All of those things are literally, I use the term literally proposals. So I ask again, what is she talking about?
Explaining what the problem is. He's excellent at laying out all of the different things that are wrong structurally in this country. And then he stops talking. And I'm always listening for solutions and specifics. Elizabeth Warren does not stop talking. She says, and here is how I'm going to fix it. And
I don't know what she's talking about, which means I think she's lying. Why? Because again, if you have a situation where we're having a conversation, you're just telling me how you feel about something, fair enough. He makes your skin crawl. You don't like him, fair enough. But if you say, and he's anti-woman, it's like, well, wait a minute. How he's anti-woman? I can look at the polls. I mean, anything that Warren is pushing for. But they do know that. I think that's my point. They do know that.
Well, I mean, the women don't know he's anti-woman.
Right. The women don't know he's anti-woman. That's something completely different. I mean, apparently they didn't notice. And then if you say, well, he doesn't have any policy proposals, and that week he literally put out a climate bill that was like $16 trillion. I mean, it was on MSNBC. Did she not see it? Well, a little bit earlier in that particular day. I mean, or the criminal justice bill that came out like a few days before she did this particular video, or the getting rid of college debt, which came out a week or two before this particular video, or the Medicare for All, which came out like a year before this particular video. I mean, how far down the line do I have to go to get rid of college debt? I mean, one proposal after the next. That's all he's done is put out proposals in regards to what he wants to do.
So who ran this hatchet job? Who's running the panel?
I mean, I don't know who's running the panel because it's any random day on MSNBC. This woman is named Zerlina Maxwell. Zerlina Maxwell was sitting, by the way.
I've heard of her before, yeah.
Well, she was sitting right beside that woman that said, he makes my skin crawl. If you look at the video, she's in that exact same video.
Yeah.
This is atrocious. And I'm sorry, it is abysmal. Brian Williams should lose his job. The fact that Brian Williams can get on that channel and lie the way he does, the fact is Brian Williams is great company. Zerlina Maxwell has just got on television and flagrantly, outrageously lied. It's propaganda. It's Pravda. But in this case, for corporate audience. I mean, that's astonishing. They are pushing Warren. They literally said Bernie Sanders doesn't have any plan, but Warren has a ton of them. Warren has been aping Sanders from day one. But the issues weren't. And notice she went to Kamala Harris after that. Is it possible? Is it possible to any degree that's possible that the issue here is that Sanders doesn't have a vagina? And if Sanders did have a vagina, you'd all be on board for that guy. And I know that's a little rough. And you might say, whoa, hey, that's a little, how am I wrong? Kamala Harris, are you serious? You're literally going to go from Kamala Harris my point is this. If you are working this hard to turn objective reality into something that is that, you're literally running afoul of reality itself. You're fighting this. Is not with Sanders, it's with reality. And you're willing to get on MSNBC and lie. And I have to figure out, why are you lying like this? Even the other woman who said makes the skin crawl. I don't know why he makes the skin crawl. He's just anti-woman. Okay, is it possible that he has something to do with the fact that he's a man? Seeing as you brought up the fact he was anti-woman when he is not. You brought up the fact of the woman stuff. I didn't. And I look at her and I think, is it possible the same way? Look, I don't think that the only reason they're voting for Warren in this case, I think it's kind of like blacks voting for Obama. It's like, yes, you would have voted Democrat anyway, but does it make me feel that ounce of, yes, take my vote? Yeah, I think it does. In this case, I think the same thing is true for Warren, and I think the same thing is true in the sense of going with Kamala Harris. I think they think it's their turn. And then when you look at the polling in regards to who Warren supporters are, it is a lot of people with extra degrees. I mean, it's an interesting thing when you look at Sanders' camp and Warren's camp. It's slightly different in regards, even though the policies that Warren apes, is similar. It's like she's an echo. And in which case, it's like, how are you saying that this guy doesn't have any policies Warren does? It's just weird. It's really weird. MSNBC is a propaganda outlet. They are doing their best to push Warren. CNN is a propaganda outlet. They're doing the same. In this case, they're just against Sanders. I try to show these because when I say it, I don't want people to be like, okay, you're just saying that. I want to show evidence of what I'm saying. But I can go down the list with this day after day after day. If I did this show every day, I could show you something every day that MSNBC is doing. It's just utterly atrocious. This is one of the most atrocious things that I've ever seen from the standpoint of propaganda, where objective reality doesn't matter. And they're willing to run that show against reality itself because nobody on that show will call them on the fact that what they're saying is just outright lies. Anything to add to that? I mean, I know, I'm a little rough on MSNBC, but of course I'm going to be rough on MSC because they're not being honest.
I guess some kind of a fairness doctrine should be in place.
Right. Or just, look, my show is named Jamal Thomas. And this is radio hour, and I know it's 2 hours, so I'm kind of lying. But you get my point. I give you my perspective. And from my standpoint, fairness in the context of me doing my show, it exists only in the sense that I need to be honest and ethical, and I need to have a certain degree of integrity when I do my show. You know my politics. When I start my show, I'm a lefty. I'm an unabashed lefty. I have no issue at all pushing for certain things because I'm a member of a particular class, and I understand I'm a member of a particular class. It would be weird for me to push things that was outside of my own best interests from various political aspects. I don't lie to you when I give you my presentation. You know where I'm coming from. You know my ideology. I don't claim to be non-biased. I don't think objectivity in the sense of being non-biased exists. Everybody has somewhere where they're putting the pole down and orient themselves to. In fact, I don't trust people who say they're non-biased because I don't think it exists. When MSNBC and CNN do their show, they exist in the context of we are non-biased. And I'm saying that is nonsense. And I can show it over and over and over again to show that it's nonsense. And whether they realize it or not, when they scream at Trump and they get mad when Trump calls them fake news, they are discrediting themselves. It is not Trump that is the problem. Trump is a flagrant liar, and that flagrant liar can call you fake news all day. It wouldn't matter one iota because he's a flagrant liar. The reason it burns is because to some degree it is true. When you're running clips like this that are out of line with reality itself, and somebody says that's fake news, and they can show the fact that it's fake news and say what the woman is showing has nothing to do with reality itself, it makes you look bad. It makes it look like the fake news thing works. When I call you Pravda, and I say that, hey, these guys are Pravda, they're pushing for, particular people or members while simultaneously claiming to be objective, well, you hurt your own credibility in that process. That's why I show it. That's why I show it. It warms my heart a little bit to show it too, if I'm being honest.
It reminds me of the big chasm that Trump succeeds by building, and that CNN and MSNBC succeed in turn by forwarding.
Yeah, they do. I mean, because look, it's like whatever you want to say about Trump in a sense, that's not the thing that burns. Like it's one of those things is like in politics, there's this thing where sometimes you'll find political people leaning away from narratives. Like somebody says, Democrats are tax and spend. And so Democrats are like, okay, we don't want to fit within the context of that narrative because we don't want that narrative to have that much more force when it's used against us. So we're going to not be tax and spend. We are going to do something else. Or at the very least, we're going to say something else. Or they would say Democrats are weak, in which case you have people who are more hawkish on foreign policy now as Democrats. So Hillary Clinton gets in, and I don't know if it's because she's a woman, in which case she wants to push back against the notion that women are more compassionate and that type of stuff, but whether it's Democrats are weak, they push back against those narratives. It's the reason why Nixon could go to China and not get called weak, because Nixon is a Republican. He's the guy that was doing illegal bombing. Nixon can't be weak. So if Nixon is working with China, then that has to be okay. Or it's why Bill Clinton could pass NAFTA, where Bush couldn't. Because, well, Bill Clinton is a Democrat, and if Bill Clinton is being okay with NAFTA and the prison stuff and the cutting of welfare and the getting rid of the Glass-Steagall, since he's a Democrat, it has to be okay. Bill Clinton was able to do things that Republicans weren't able to do because he was a Democrat. In the same way that Nixon was able to do things that Democrats weren't able to do because he was a Republican. And the narratives that were associated with each of the parties allowed them a certain way of leeway to do those things. I'm saying the same thing is true from the standpoint of our politics. They tend to push back against those various narratives. Let me see. And so, Democrats act that way and Republicans act that way. All right, let's see. I want to go into, I want to do a top of the hour because we are literally hitting the top of the hour. WRWK 93.9 FM has multiple shows on this particular station that you may be interested in addition to having this particular awesome show. So one of these shows, I'll go through the ones for the week. Citizen Voices with Jay, that takes place at 2 p.m. on Sunday. And the Frequency of Hope with Stephanie. Stephanie is awesome. I did her show initially. She gave me an intro. That comes on Monday at 7 p.m. The Progressive Radio Soapbox Radio Hour, 2 hours. I'm not quite sure how to add the 2 hours to that. 2 hours just sounds weird. But that takes place 5 p.m. That's your drive time hour. I am the individual that you are listening to right now that you either hate viciously or love entirely. One of those two things. Wednesday, Her Human Equal Rights with Leslie.
Every other Wednesday.
Every other Wednesday. Richmond Business Babes with Lisa. That takes place at 11 a.m. on Thursday. In addition to Self-Care with Self-Care Activists. I'm sorry. That's at 4 p.m.
With Mary Burris.
With Mary Burris.
4 to 6.
4 to 6 on Thursday.
One of my favorite shows.
Is it? You like it?
Oh, it's delightful.
So then we have Critiques of Culture on Friday. That's at 7 p.m. That's the show that I want to get them to talk about Star Trek so I can be on. We can just talk about aliens and stuff. I think that'd be awesome.
Yes.
Guys, look, this show is brought to you by you in real terms. And so we ask for underwriters for the show periodically because this is local independent media. And we do want you to, underwriting the show essentially allows the show to continue on the way it is and to allow the show to expand and get larger and that type of thing. So we ask your help and producing this particular show. In addition to that, WRWK is a volunteer-run independent public radio station that relies on listener support to continue to bring you great programming. It takes roughly $60 a day to keep WRWK on the air, and you can ensure the life of the station by making a donation or volunteering. It is brought to you by listeners like you, and I want to give a thank you to Morton, to Lee, to Karen, to Leslie, Lisa, Mark, Stephanie, Ron, Stephen, Josh, Christian, and Richard for making this show work. All right. So let's get to the news. Also, the radios, you can call us at 804-464-1089, 804-464-1089. If there is something you agree with, disagree with, some way, Jesus Christ, can't get it out, or somewhere in between, you have a comment or so forth, keep it clean because this is the radio station. My YouTube audience tends to be a bit free with the language sometimes. So just be aware. But again, 804-464-1089. So Obama, I can feel Democrats, collective butts puckering. Obama, Donald Trump, since he's been in office, has set various fires around the globe. Now, in pursuit of setting those fires around the globe, you ask, what is he getting out of setting these fires? Because it doesn't necessarily seem he's been all that successful in getting the things that he's wanted to accomplish. So, be it Iran, be it Venezuela, be it North Korea, not only are the domestic policies not that great, there are literal fires. So in Venezuela, Donald Trump decides he wants to put additional sanctions on Venezuela. And putting these additional sanctions on Venezuela, the goal of this is a regime change in Venezuela to get Maduro out of that office. And doing this, tens of thousands of people have died as a result of those sanctions. Sanctions, whether you realize it or not, are an act of war. In the situation with Iran, Bill Clinton, when he was in office, put through those sanctions on Saddam Hussein. Those sanctions killed hundreds of thousands, 500,000 kids, literally, in Iraq, based on those sanctions that Bill Clinton took place. When Albright was asked about those sanctions, Albright said, yeah, there were certain consequences that came along, but I think it was necessary. I think she said. Yeah, it's necessary for you because you are completely separate and distinct from the choices that you are making, meaning I can make a choice in an office and I'm going to go get a coffee and I'm going to go to a massage. However, the application or the consequences of those choices are being felt elsewhere. We need to get to the point to stop believing that just because a person makes a choice in an office, that they need to be to some degree held responsible for the actions of those consequences, even if it's not the right. Meaning, a person can easily make a choice when they are not directly hit by the consequences of those choices. Albright and Clinton could say, I'm going to write this bill down, or I'm going to write this particular rule down that allows sanctions, because they are not affected by those sanctions. The kids in that various country is. The goal of this stuff is to change the governments in those countries. My question is rather basic, though, and a question I've asked before. What does the United States have to do with Venezuela? How on earth is Venezuela our business? This goes back to this colonial imperialist position where we want to essentially run roughshod over the world and tell the world and the various countries that we have no business in how they should be running their government. Not to mention, from an economic standpoint, they have oil and minerals that we want to get our hands on and our companies want to get their hands on. And since those companies are those plutocrats, the American oligarchs give campaigns a lot of cash, those campaigns where they give a lot of cash to and have all sorts of influence in, they want to get their hands on those resources. And Trump is just the conduit to do that. However, so was Obama.
Sadly.
The world didn't fall off of a cliff when Trump took office. The world just moved a little bit closer to the cliff. Obama had already moved up to that cliff. You don't believe me? Obama called Venezuela a threat. Let me, and just to play you this trigger what I'm talking about. This is Obama. Listen to what's being said here, because this is important.
U.S. President Barack Obama issued an executive order on Monday declaring Venezuela a national security threat.
Obama declared Venezuela a national security threat. How is Venezuela a national security threat? How? I'm asking, honestly. I mean, we're talking about a situation where a country that is a tiny podunk country that is barely keeping their own stuff together, and we are calling them a national security threat. My question is very basic. How? How? How is Obama saying this? How is Obama doing this? How is there a justification for this? And again, in the same thing of asking this question of objective reality, does it really make sense as objective reality that Venezuela is in any way a threat to the United States with our $1 trillion military budget and a country that seems to can barely keep itself together?
I think it depends where you stand. They're not really using, those brown people aren't really using that oil. You know, we should be using that oil.
We should be using that oil. Yeah. We got to get our hands on that oil.
Somehow it got under the wrong country.
That's what it is. That oil got into the wrong country and it needs a little bit of freedom.
Right.
Because let's be very clear. The whole point of Guaido is a patsy. Guaido is the patsy that is in that particular country where we can work with to get our hands on the resources of that country. Yeah. And at the end of the day, if Guaido was part of the United States, and if anybody in the United States did what Guaido did, they would be shot or hung. He is a traitor. I mean, think about what we're saying. They screamed at the height of their lungs that Facebook and Twitter ads, half of which that took place after the election, was an attack on democracy itself. And we are willing to work with Guaido to literally undermine the elected government of that country. You don't have to like Maduro. You don't have to think Maduro's a good guy. I haven't said anything about Maduro at all, one way or the other. This is more along the lines of, do you want the military, us, our policy, to in any way run roughshod over somebody else's government? And do we have enough problems of our own that we need to attend to, as opposed to getting into affairs of a nation that we have nothing to do with? The issues for Venezuela are for the people of Venezuela, not for the people of the United States. And Guaido, if he got in, meaning if there was a coup in Venezuela, just like Hillary Clinton and Obama ushered in that coup in Honduras, and that place is a basket case. To this day, that place is on fire.
Chile, Guatemala, we have a long record.
We do, but Honduras was under Obama's record, meaning that, you know, and Hillary Clinton ludicrously was like, no, it wasn't a coup. No, the military ushered that guy out in his pajamas. But it wasn't a coup at all.
He didn't mind.
He didn't mind. Honduras is literally on fire today. Have you seen what's been taking place over there? That place is in flames. They tried to do the same thing in Venezuela. And Maduro didn't go anywhere. He was just, he was ensconced in it. Why? Because there wasn't a public support. When Guaido came out calling for a military uprising, it was him by himself. Nobody responded to that. If that was anybody else in the United States, he would have been shot as a traitor. But in this case, Maduro couldn't touch him, because if Maduro touched him, it would have given pretext for which Western powers would have tried to invade.
Yep.
So my point is this. This started under Obama. Say what you want about Trump, complain, cry, all that stuff. This started under Obama. We did not fall over a cliff when Trump took office. It started under Obama. So Max Blumenthal gets the opportunity to ask an Obama official a very basic question. Very basic. How is Venezuela a national security threat? And why did Obama say that? Very basic. That's it. Simple, straightforward. How was Venezuela a national security threat? You work for the Obama administration. You should be able to answer that question. Max Blumenthal, here he is.
That we're in to ratchet up Venezuela's economic crisis and harm ordinary civilians.
So just if I may, go ahead and direct.
All right. So this is the clip is here.
How does Venezuela threaten my security or the security of American?
Come on. You can do it. You can do it. Okay, maybe it can't do it.
Citizens, or was this not a tool to bring us to the crisis that we're in, to ratchet up Venezuela's economic crisis and harm ordinary civilians?
So just if I may, go ahead and directly respond to that. So again, I would say from the Obama administration standpoint, the policy was very much one of support for the democratic movement in Venezuela.
Which one would that be?
Intended to be
the one that staged a military coup?
The
movement that staged a military coup.
Let her finish firstly. Okay. You asked her a specific question. She's trying to answer.
So I would just say again, the policy was very much a support for democracy, support for democratic movement in Venezuela.
a national security
So you
threat
heard
to
her.
the United States.
So you heard her. Non-answer. Non-answer. Why were you guys going after Venezuela in the sense of a national security threat? She says, I think that question was for me. I want to answer it. Max Blumenthal said, please do. And she turns around and says, well, I mean, look, we just support the people of Venezuela. But how are you supporting the people of Venezuela? I mean, what people of Venezuela are you supporting? I mean, you are working with a guy who literally tried to stage a military coup of the elected leader of that country, not to mention the pressure that had been put on that country for God knows how long. Do you realize even under the gentleman that was before, Chavez, same thing. They took him out of office for 2 days in a coup that was working, meaning working with the United States to get him out of that office. That coup worked for 2 days, but because of mass popular support, Chavez, he said he was at the point where they were about to shoot him, and when they weren't able to do it because the public flooded the streets in order to stop what was taking place. They tried to do the same thing with Maduro. But again, there's no public support for Western powers to take over. Even if you want to make the argument that the public may want somebody other than Maduro, what they don't want is a Western government, the United States, a superpower that is an enemy of that country, running roughshod over that country and exploiting the resources of the people of that country in this kind of old-style imperialism. They don't want that. They don't want that at all. And the very basic question to this woman is, how were they a threat? I want to play it again. It's important. All right, let's see. I hope you guys can hear this, including on the radio.
My security or the security of American citizens, or was this not a tool to bring us to the crisis that we're in, to ratchet up Venezuela's economic crisis and harm ordinary civilians?
So just if I may, go ahead and directly respond to that. So again, I would say from the Obama administration standpoint, the policy was very much one of support for the democratic movement in Venezuela.
Which one would that be?
Intended to be
the one that staged a military coup?
The Venezuelan.
This is sad. She has no answer.
You asked her a specific question.
Yeah, but she never gave an answer.
So I would just say again, the policy was very much of support for democracy,
Right.
support for democratic movement
Right.
in Venezuela. There's never one to go after the Venezuelan people.
Right.
I don't believe, it's certainly I know to be the case under the Obama
Right.
administration, and I don't believe it to be the case today.
So you are saying that a policy that literally imposed sanctions on the people of Venezuela that made it difficult for them to get drugs and medicine and food and all of these other items, that literally was being done in order to squeeze that population to such a degree that that population will create all sorts of chaos and havoc within the internal domestic affairs, so they would change the government of that country. That particular policy wasn't in any way directed at the people of Venezuela. It just so happened to adversely affect the people of Venezuela. Which one is it? I mean, that's literally a non-political answer. So Max Blumenthal goes further. He continues to ask. He says, look, that's not really an answer. And ultimately what you're saying is the pro-democracy side is a side that literally tried to stage a military coup and is going to hand over the resources of that country to all sorts of corporations and everything else to be exploited. Honduras, just like Honduras. And I say Honduras because it was recent. I mean, you can go back to Chile, you can go back to Guatemala. All of these countries were ruthlessly exploited by American corporations. In fact, whether you realize it or not, Guatemala is one of those cases. Guatemala, I don't know if you heard this called Banana Republic. Banana Republic deals with Chiquita bananas. United Fruit was one of the companies in the United States that used bananas and found that people love bananas. They had to get the bananas from somewhere. So they started working with those governments. Now, they would run roughshod over those governments because they had so much economic clout and economic power because there were companies in the United States and they were buying all this land and everything else. As they were buying this land, this bought political power where they could essentially control the political leaders that were in the various countries to allow them sweetheart deals. In some cases, the workers weren't even really getting paid money. They were getting paid these kind of tokens that they could use and buy at shops that were owned by the companies. Certain people, like always, start to get in office and say, look, we're going to change this. We're going to have certain land reforms and everything else. Arbenz, I believe Arbenz was in Guatemala. You had Chile. In these cases, the United States starts working with the CIA to undermine these various governments. Some of this had to do with propaganda that was given to the government of the United States saying the guy who just wanted basic land reforms was somehow a communist and that you needed to take him out. In one case, the CIA ends up bombing the parliament and putting in a dictator. In Chile, same thing. Pinochet gets put into office when they help with murdering various military leaders or political leaders in that country in order to get in the dictator. Because after all, strong men, the U.S. loves, because strong men can essentially control the population and give the resources with that population not having a say in those resources. The same thing happened in the Middle East when, all this talk about Iran. Do you realize that one of the first coups that the United States did was in Iran, where Iran started talking about the resources and using some of that resources for the people of Iran, in which case Britain and the United States worked to undermine that government and fomented a coup in that country. You can go down the list. It wasn't just one or two. It wasn't just in the Middle East. Some of those countries in the Middle East actually were secular governments. The chaos that you are seeing in the Middle East has a lot to do with this kind of Cold War stuff, dealing with Russia and Afghanistan and trying to use turn Afghanistan into one of the Vietnams for Russia. My point is just very basic. Our influence around the globe, this notion that we don't like dictators, is nonsense. And you only have to look at American history in South America and in the Middle East to see that we love dictators. In the case of Maduro, this notion that we don't like him because he's the dictator is nonsense. We don't like him because we can't get our hands on those resources. And if we can get them out, our companies will be able to get their hands on those resources, and Juan Guaido would be a patsy and be perfectly willing to sell his people out in doing so. I want you to hear an answer because somebody else intervenes in this. It's important. If you say that that country is a foreign policy threat, fair enough. Then my first question is why? And if you can't answer that question of why, then I have to start looking for other reasons. And it comes across that you would like us to use our foreign policy as just a tool for corporations. Again, when I bring up 90% of the elections are won by the side with the most cash, it has real world foreign policy consequences. If you are trying to win and you're trying to get in office and you need cash, who's going to give you cash? People who have interests in getting their hands on resources like this. Listen to where this conversation goes. It's fascinating.
A national security threat to the United States. That was the specific language of this designation.
Thanks, family. I think there are many reasons to consider Venezuela as a threat to the U.S. population right here, right now, including drugs, including terrorism, support to terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda, including the Colombian guerrilla.
Did you hear what that guy said? I hope you heard what that guy said. Max Blumenthal, awesome journalist, asked a very basic question. You said Venezuela is a national security threat. We have $1 trillion military. That country can barely keep itself together. But there is national security. How? Obama's person could not answer that question at all. And she gave some kind of propaganda thing. We believe in freedom and justice, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's nonsense. Obama was close friends with the Saudi government, which is literally a totalitarian government that was out there crucifying people and chopping off heads. Literally. So stop with this nonsense of, oh, he's a dictator, so we don't like dictators. That is nonsense. Our foreign policy calls on things like dictators only in the sense of using that to hit our enemies. People who are friends, we never bring it up. This is politics. This other gentleman here, who you heard mention Al-Qaeda, support for Al-Qaeda. The Obama administration was literally selling and giving weapons to issues of Al-Qaeda to use as a battering ram to take down Assad. That is flat true. We were supporting and arming terrorists to take down Assad. For this guy to come out and say the reason we don't like Maduro is because of Al-Qaeda is nonsense. You're saying that Obama is classifying Maduro as a national security threat because he's working with Al-Qaeda when Obama himself is arming Al-Qaeda to take down Assad? What are you saying? This is what they're saying. We asked a very basic question of how is Venezuela a national security threat? And his answer is utter nonsense because nobody can be honest with the answer. The real honest answer is, look, we wanted to get our hands on those resources. Nobody ever says that. Nobody ever just says the honest answer. They have resources under that ground, and it's unfortunate for them that they were born on the wrong ground. If those resources were born under the United States, we wouldn't be messing with them. They need to share their resources. It's that simple. And Maduro doesn't want to share. And so because Maduro doesn't want to share, we need to get Maduro out of office. We have companies and corporations. We have people who are giving us a lot of cash. We have companies that want to exploit the resources of Venezuela. And they can't get their hands on the stuff in Venezuela if Maduro's in office. That's the honest answer. That's the answer that no one wants to say. That's the answer that Obama never wanted to mention. That's the answer that Donald Trump can't just outright say. So instead, what do you say? He's a dictator. He's a bad guy. He's a horrible person. We believe in freedom. We believe in democracy. We, Abrams, Trump, Pompeo, John Bolton, all of us care deeply and immensely for the people of Venezuela, and we want to ensure that they believe in freedom also. Abrams, who's a convicted liar, literally, and who was involved in absolute outright war crimes in El Salvador and Nicaragua during the time of the Sandinista government. Bolton, who is literally attacking the International Criminal Court because he could be liable for war crimes charges if that criminal court was able to do the investigations that they wanted to do. Pompeo, who got out there and bragged about killing Russians and who was essentially a religious maniac in and of himself. All of these people are lunatics. All of these people are horrible people, but all of them care immensely, deeply, almost in a spiritual way about the people of Venezuela and freedom in Venezuela. That's nonsense. It started, I'm sorry, if this bothers you, with Obama. It started with Obama. I just wanted to point that out and point out the problems associated with some of the foreign policy and just nail home this point that this stuff with Trump, as bad and atrocious as Trump is, and he is, it didn't start with him. The world did not fall off of a cliff when Trump took office. You should want more from your Democratic Party. You should want more from the party that you're going to put your support behind. And it should go further than, I just think he can beat the Republican. It should honestly go towards, what do you want the outside world to look like? And who is the person who is in the best position to do so? And the standpoint of the Democratic Party, you are at a time of an interregnum. It is unclear on who the leadership of the party is, meaning there is a fight for the leadership, for the soul of the party itself. One side is essentially a neoliberal milquetoast version of the Republican Party, Republican light. And you have this other faction that they don't even consider to be a Democrat, which, if you're talking to the American public, is not a negative, seeing as the perspective of people about the Democratic Party. And that side is trying hard, despite the media like CNN and MSNBC, to smear him otherwise, to re-ensoul the Democratic Party and to turn it into what it used to be it a representative of the 99, or the very least the 90%.
Yes. Can I throw in?
Go for it.
It occurs to me that we should point out that in spite of what Mr. Trump might be mumbling to himself if he's listening to us, which is not a very good chance, since we're not really that have much profile, is that when you think of the country, I remember the old phrase, love it or leave it. In fact, a church in Virginia recently posted that on their exterior sign, America, love it or leave it, is that loving America and fixing it kind of go hand in hand. Loving it and loving whatever loudmouth is trying to get you to stop having a conversation. That is what you call authoritarianism. So we love America so much that we're willing to spend our time and our money coming here and talking to folks about the realities of news. Not because we hate MSNBC or CNN, but because we know they need help, to be honest. They have fallen under this way, probably of selling a lot more ads when they get people really riled up. They sell a lot more whatevers.
Well, that's true, by the way. I mean, logically, just logically. I mean, this is not to impugn, the various places, even though it kind of is. But from a logic standpoint, your media is a business. Your media is always in this position where reality and truth has to come up against business concerns. Everybody does, just because you're in a capitalistic system. If you were selling hamburgers, the goal of it is not to sell the hamburgers. The goal is to make cash. Selling the hamburgers is just the way you do it. The same thing is true with media. They are giving you stories, and there are some stories that get you riled up a little bit more than others, that make you watch a little bit more than others. The president of the United States is working with the Russians in order to undermine America. Oh, that's terrifying. I need to watch the news. What is Rachel Maddow telling me today? Like, that's the way media goes. Rachel Maddow's ratings went through the roof when Trump got in office. Why? Because she had spinning one web of reality and conspiracy theory after the next night after night after night after night. And what happened when Mueller comes out and says, yeah, he's not working with the Russians? Her ratings plummet that night because people didn't want to see the bad news of, oh, we didn't get him, we didn't get him, we didn't get him. That's what it was. I mean, the same thing's true with CNN. What is it? Zucker comes out and says Donald Trump is bad for America, but he's great for our ratings. Why? Because every night CNN is going to come on and spin one web after the next about how horrible Trump is and how something takes place. Catch is, Trump is pretty horrible. And, you know, it's not so much that you can't find horrible stories about Trump. They're there. They're constant. Trump is a loot. Like, when you listen to him, one of my people on the channel said, it would be awesome to see Biden and Trump, like two people that are like completely like senile on the debate stage going after one another. One guy don't even know where he is. And the other guy is just lying flagrantly and remorselessly. Like, but I mean, that's funny, but that's sad, but that's true.
Politics reaches a zenith.
Yeah, I know, right? And it's like, oh God, this is American politics. But it's a business. And sometimes people forget that it's a business. And, you know, they have to sell ads. When Sanders was like, look, there's going to be an ad on a drug company on this debate. And he was right. There were drug ads at the beginning of the debate and after the debate.
I didn't even notice that.
They're trying to sell ads. Their
Yep.
job is to sell those things. If Sanders gets in office and they get Medicare for all, what happens? What happens? One, I tell you this, they're not going to be selling drug ads on television anymore, which means CNN is not going to get that ad revenue from that. Why are you selling ads on TV anyway? You see an ad for a drug, you're going to tell your doctor, hey, I know you went to school and all for, 8-10 years in order for medical science, but this ad told me about something and now I want you to give me this drug. Right. Your doctor is in the position to tell you what you should take, not your advertiser who has every interest in you buying that drug.
Yeah, they ban alcohol, they ban cigarettes.
Yeah, it's nonsense to have drug ads on television. The only reason you would do it, I want to tell my doctor to give me this particular drug. Why? No, that advertising money would go away. You think CNN wants its coffers to be shrunk that much more? They do not.
Well, they're really fat now and not doing a lot of good with it.
Well, no, they're not. But I guess my point is, there's certain candidates where they have a fiscal interest in ensuring not get ahead. And not just that, there's also this thing of the unwashed masses. When they look at Trump supporters, they see people saying, our wages, we're not making enough cash. And they look at these people as the unwashed masses and everything else. They look at Sanders supporters as similar because Sanders supporters, in this case, healthcare, Social Security, things that they don't necessarily need because they're not persistently vulnerable because these guys are millionaires. They look at these things almost as very similar items, missing the point that one is having a hate rally and the other is having a love fest. But to them, they're the unwashed masses. They're not of our class. We're suspicious of those interests and everything else. And like I said, at the end of the day, with certain people, with the Sanders in office, their bottom line gets a little bit tighter. And I'm pretty clear that they know that. In fact, I'm pretty sure that they know that. Before we go on, let me read this part, just to give a heads up to the underwriters and so forth. I do want to push something that I think the people on this channel might like, especially if they're Democrats. I mean, yeah, I just hit the Democratic Party, so fair enough. But this one I thought was the funniest thing on the planet to me, and it warmed my heart. So just before I read it, WRWK is a volunteer-run independent public radio station that relies on listener support to continue bringing you great programming. It takes roughly $60 a day to keep WRWK on the air, and you can assure the life of the station by making a donation or volunteering. Information at theworkfm.org. You can also call us at 804-464-1089, 804-464-1089. Look, this channel is essentially run by you. Literally. This channel is essentially talk radio with this particular perspective. There are multiple shows on this radio station that you may like, and this channel is trying to grow and expand. And if you would be interested in underwriting this show, you can contact us at WRWK on Facebook on the Work FM. Not to mention, you can call the radio station if you want to, if you're interested in doing so. So I'm not a fan of Trump. I've said that on more than one occasion. I've said that Trump, I deride him as a reality show host because I think that's true. I deride him as a habitual liar because I think that's true. Racist, sexist, bigoted, all of those things because I think it's true. I was saying it like a year, 2 years, even before Trump fully got into office. Not because I enjoy calling people racist, it's few and far between where I use the term race. I tend to think of things in a sense of class, not so much race, because I think class is more important, because class is one of those things that kind of, issues of race oftentimes are issues of class. They're kind of a feedback mechanism between the two things. I can't necessarily tell somebody to like or understand my identity, nor do I feel the need to essentially browbeat them into trying. One of the things I can do, however, is nail on this issue of class and elements that affect all of us. You can hate my guts and still have, issues of making sure your kid can eat, your kid can go to school, to ensuring that you get a decent wage, to ensuring that for the most part, you can have a decent life. You still have a house, you still have a kid, you still have a house note, a car note, you still have healthcare bills. You have all of these things that make up a life, whether you understand my identity or not, whether you hate my guts or not. From an economic standpoint, we are all on the same page, the 99%. I don't know how to tell somebody to be more understanding of my particular identity or heritage or all that other stuff. What I can do is take down some of the tensions that are driving some of the, let's say, conflict in this country by dealing with issues of class. Those are things that are unifying items. Class. So when I say those things about Trump, I don't want it to be like, I just go to that from a starting point. Donald Trump was on an escalator when he started his campaign, and he rode that escalator down saying he believes that Mexicans are sexist, are drug dealers, and they're bringing drugs into the country, and rapists, and that he assumes that a few are good people. Now, when the person says that, I have to, again, compare that to the objective world. Nearly half of the businesses in this country are either started by immigrants or people who are descendants of immigrants. Real talk. Half. I want to say that again. Half of the businesses, nearly half, I think it's like 46%, are created by either immigrants or people who are descendants of immigrants. This notion that people who are coming into the country are not contributing to this particular country is utter nonsense. Can you always find one? Yes, there's always a probability distribution. That's on any scenario. No scenario has it where everybody is, angels and so forth. Some of these people are coming from horrendous scenarios. But I'm talking about across the general spectrum of the term, how this group is being castigated is entirely to dodge. In the same way, don't you think it's odd? In the same way that the Democratic Party is pointing to the Russians to explain how they lost and how they failed the middle class, and to explain away their failure to reality show hosts. Not to mention the 1,300 seats all across, 1,100 seats all throughout the United States, the House, the Senate, the Supreme Court, and being so comically weak to not even to ensure that your guy, the pick that Obama was owed, he didn't fight for it. Merrick Milquetoast Garland. He let it slide because he assumed Clinton was going to get in office. He didn't fight for it. He didn't fight for it. I am just making a very basic point that in the similar way, we have, in the same similar way, our politics are organized that way. Look, basic point. From the standpoint of the Republican Party, Donald Trump is atrocious. However, Donald Trump is not atrocious, and it's an absolute. And so it's this weird way of trying to talk about Trump and deal with issues of class, but also having to kind of bat down these issues of race that kind of come up in the context of dealing with Trump. If you're on a go escalator, you said Mexicans are rapists and drug dealers. Yes, I'm probably going to call you racist because that particular statement does not line up with objective reality in regards to what immigrants do for this country. They're being demonized. Fascists tend to use demonization as a way to hide the failures and the ills in the country itself. The Democratic Party did that, screaming the Russians. Trump is doing that, screaming immigrants. Both sides are doing the exact same thing to cover for their own failures. Both sides are pointing the finger at somebody else other than the problems associated with the country itself. If the Democratic Party said that Hillary Clinton lost because the Republican Party was gaming the system by cutting down voting locations, by shaving the number of people off the voting rolls, using interstate cross-check, by using voter ID laws that are entirely unnecessary and have an outsized influence on people of color, then I would say, okay, fair enough, you're right. But if you're going to go to the Russians, then I'm going to say, you're not being serious. You're not being serious. Donald Trump does the same thing with immigrants. He's atrocious. Democrats might actually like this next story. Donald Trump, did you know this, is being primaried?
Really? I didn't know that.
Donald Trump is being primaried. I was astounded by this. I was shocked by this. I was enamored even by this story. I don't think this is going to go anywhere, but you never know. You'd be shocked. I mean, essentially, you have some Republicans who say, oh, God, I don't like Trump being that honest. We need you to rail that back, buddy. Like, I don't need you to show the ugly, flaming ghostwriter face of American foreign policy and imperialism, not to mention the domestic policy where you essentially rape the public blind. Yeah, that's too much. That's too much. We need you to be less honest. Yes, we like the tax cuts. Yes, we like you attacking the immigrants. Yes, we even like you being a little boisterous with China, but not too boisterous because you're hurting the stock market. But calm down on the racism stuff. So some people are primarying. The guy who's primarying Donald Trump is Joe Walsh. Do you remember Joe Walsh?
Vaguely.
Joe Walsh is a loudmouth. And not just a loudmouth. Joe Walsh is literally, essentially, the same quantity as Donald Trump. Bombastic, hateful, vitriolic, all those things. He even comes out and says, well, you know, I started Trump as Trump. This is Walsh. Now, Walsh is explaining why he's getting into the race. And he's effectively said, I'll just read. Walsh said Thursday that he was strongly considering entering the race. I'm not trying to be cute or coy. I've told you before, if somebody is going to get in there and go after him, it's got to be done soon. You're running out of time, but more importantly, these are not conventional times. Look at the guy in the White House. These are urgent times. Walsh has previously called for a Republican to challenge the president, calling him an unfit con man who is bad for the country earlier this month. Walsh said that he voted for Trump in 2016, but only because Trump wasn't Hillary Clinton. Where Trump lost him, Walsh said, was during the president's news conference with Vladimir Putin at the summit last year in Helsinki, Finland, in which Trump sided with the Russian strongman over his own intelligence community assessments of Russian interference in the 2016 election. Now, when it was pointed out to Walsh, like, wait a minute, dude, you've had some pretty nasty tweets yourself. I mean, stuff that you said have been hateful and vitriolic. He says, look, you know me, but I've changed. He says, I saw how bad Trump was, and I moderated myself over the last year, that he evolved. Do you know how I know Walsh? Walsh is a deadbeat dad. Literally, Walsh owed his wife $117,000, family values. Owed his wife $117,000 while simultaneously, while running in the campaign, loaning his campaign a ton of money. Deadbeat dad Walsh is challenging Donald Trump for the Republican presidency. Deadbeat dad Walsh. I love those terms. I don't like deadbeat dads. I had a deadbeat dad. So I am biased on this issue of deadbeat dad stuff. I want to say deadbeat dad 1,000 times with Walsh name behind it, because the idea that a deadbeat dad is going to get into a race and then call Donald Trump an unfit con man. It is true that Donald Trump is an unfit con man. It is true that you're also a deadbeat dad, and this notion that we're going to trade one con man for another con man seems pointless to me.
He's a perfect straw man, though.
He is a perfect straw man. But this, I mean, it's like, come on. You owe your wife $117,000 and then gets her to sign a contract. Now, look, I know I was a deadbeat dad at one time, but let's pretend I wasn't a deadbeat dad. So sign this contract that says I wasn't a deadbeat dad. Nonsense. It is what it is. My dad wasn't around. My dad was also a habitual liar. And my dad, you know, child support was few and far between. So I understand in a flesh-to-bone way the difficulty associated with a kid or a mom who's not necessarily the, you know, most financially fit and persistently vulnerable and wasn't the only one making that kid. I guarantee you this wasn't a conception by Jesus of sorts. This was a human being who two people were involved in the process of sex. I don't like to call it love making. I don't like to add words to it. It's getting it in. And a baby was created. Two of you. And now one person skips and leaves that other parent vulnerable, persistently vulnerable, in the context of a situation where you have all the money in the world to loan your campaign, and yet you don't want to give your parent, the kid, its due. $117,000, deadbeat dad Walsh, and then have the temerity, the gall, to be not shamed or embarrassed, and even put your face in the public limelight of going into a Republican primary. That's extraordinary. So yeah, family values wash. It's not just wash. Mark Sanford. Do you remember that name, Mark Sanford? That name should be familiar to you. Mark Sanford was a Republican that skipped out on his wife in order to go with his mistress. If I'm not mistaken, his mistress was outside of the country. And Mark Sanford, people could not find Mark Sanford. And they were like, where's Mark Sanford? Nobody could find Mark Sanford. He was nowhere to be found.
They went to Argentina.
He went to Argentina for love. For love. He went to see his mistress.
Family values.
Family values. He's like, oh, I love those dark women, those swarthy looking women with those hips. Look, Lord Jesus, I need to go and see her. And so he skipped out on his wife. He did it for love. Now, whatever you want to say about Republicans, they're horrible, they're atrocious, and everything else. But when his feelings got involved, what did he do? I'm going to get that woman.
He cried.
I'm going to see that woman.
Oh.
I'm going to Argentina. I'm going down south. I'm going to find me one of those swarthy women with big hips. That's what I want. I'm Mark Sanford. Family values. So one, family values, Donald Trump, grab him by the you-know-what. And then you have deadbeat dad, Joe Walsh. And now you have family values, skip out on his wife to get his big hip woman from Argentina, Mark Sanford. Republican clown car, Republican primary. You're going to get your opportunity again. Isn't it awesome? I can't wait. I can't wait. I want a primary. I want to see all this clown car on stage. I want to see these loudmouths going at it. I want the public to see what the Republican Party is. I want, when they say, should you let a person die on the street, and the people scream out, let him die. That's what I want. I want that ugly, nasty face to be shown on the American public. I want Donald Trump to have to go through a primary again. I want all that to take place. I want him to have to spend his money on the primary. Donald Trump right now has like 5 fires around the globe, including a trade war with China. And when Donald Trump, which is going to hit a recession, he is terrified that there is going to be a recession, which is why he is attacking Powell to the way that he is attacking Powell. Nobody in their right mind is screaming for a rate cut when the economy is doing awesome. And Donald Trump, in this particular trade war with China, realizes that the American economy is far more vulnerable than what he wants to admit that it is. What China is going to do when it gets to the election is hit Donald Trump in the knees. They are going to devalue their currency. They're going to hit him. And they have the opportunity to do so in a way that adversely affects the American economy, because any downturn in the American economy with the U.S. president in office, the president is going to lose. He is vulnerable. He has set all of these fires. The fact of the matter is, he has to be on a campaign trail at some point. Is he going to be on a campaign trail and dealing with fires in Iran, and dealing with fires in Venezuela, and dealing with fires in North Korea, and dealing with fires with China? Is he really going to be campaigning and doing all this stuff at the exact same time? No. There's no way. He's screwed up big time. Because honestly, there's no way for Trump to solve those problems. Venezuela isn't going anywhere because from a political sense, they can't go anywhere. Guaido has every incentive in the world to not compromise. Maduro is not going to compromise if it means giving Guaido power when Guaido didn't take the power in a sense, nor do you want Western powers taking over your government. Maduro is going to wait him out, especially when there's a good chance that Trump loses. Maduro isn't going anywhere. Same thing in Iran. Iran has no impetus to have any deals with Trump at all. How? The moderates were embarrassed when Trump unilaterally pulled out of that deal and absolutely attacked Iran outright, not to mention the sanctions, not to mention the drones overhead, not to mention the propaganda that was put forth, the sending over military ships, calling the Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization. That's like calling the Marines terrorists.
Yeah.
Like, this was stuff that he did. Nobody told him to do that. He did that. He ratcheted up tension in that situation. And there is no way that Iran, with their political situation, after the moderates were embarrassed in such a way, could talk to him. He screwed up. There's no way to deal with that particular problem in the sense of solving that problem. In North Korea, he started to make deals with North Korea. That's positive. But there's no way, nobody in their right mind is going to give up their nukes to a country like the United States that has been willy-nilly pulling out of deals. How would they do that?
Breaking deals. Yeah.
When John Bolton tweets out, we're going to treat North Korea like Gaddafi, Gaddafi had a machete shoved in his rectum by, you didn't know this? When Gaddafi at one point was trying to get nuclear weapons, Gaddafi decided not to do that.
Yes.
And the United States if he didn't have nuclear weapons, created essentially that was Obama's Iraq. These guys worked together. The airstrikes between France, the UK, and the United States attacking Libya. And in attacking Libya, essentially destabilizing the country where the people could go in and raid it in order to kill Gaddafi. Hillary Clinton, when seeing Gaddafi dragged out with a machete, put in his rectum, not saying he was a great guy, besides the point. Hillary Clinton cackled, "We came, we saw, he died." And she laughed ferociously after that took place. You know where Libya is now? You can buy your own black slave in Libya if you want. You want a black slave? You can get one. Thanks to Obama, ironically, the first black president, taking a military policy that completely outright destroyed a country where you have roving gangs literally selling slaves. Put it in context. I'm just saying that this was havoc that Trump, to some degree, just made worse around the globe. And he has to deal with those fires while simultaneously running for president, not to mention the economic havoc that's been wreaked based on the policies of putting sanctions around the globe and attacking China in the way that he's been attacking China, and the responses that China has taken to respond to the fact that China's been attacked. Any country will work in their own interests. Deadbeat dad, Joe Walsh, Mark Sanford, lover guy, Mark Sanford, that left his wife to see his big hip woman in Argentina. Whatever you want to think of Mark Sanford, he did it for love. Not the love of his wife, no, the love of his mistress. But the love.
the love of his experience.
Right. Love nonetheless. I love that. I want these guys on stage. Like, how can you not want them on stage? Like, this would be the greatest thing ever. Like, I see now Donald Trump flipping out, like, how dare you guys bring me to a primary? I'm on a debate stage. Now, honestly, Trump will probably not even go on a debate stage. Why? Because nobody's going to vote for these guys. Republicans fall in line. Yeah. Democrats or lefties eat each other alive. These guys tend to be orderly. These guys tend to be fascists. This notion of having multiple factions doesn't tend to necessarily apply. And not to mention, why on earth will you give up the guy who's literally giving you everything that you want in a Donald Trump, meaning from the standpoint of the right wing, for Walsh, who couldn't even, win his own place? Not to mention a deadbeat dad.
Yes, we know where that deal's going to go.
Every time they mention his name, I hope they add deadbeat dad to it. I want him to say it every time. Deadbeat dad Joe Walsh. It even has a ring to it. Deadbeat dad Joe Walsh. Deadbeat dad Joe Walsh. All right. So I want to do another story. Raid Area 51. Raid Area 51. I don't know if you guys know about this. So Raid Area 51, a gentleman on Facebook comes out with a story. And he says, "Hey guys, let's raid Area 51. He says, let's all get there together. They can't stop us all. And let's do the run with our arms behind our back in the roto style, essentially running like this at top speed as fast as you can to Area 51. They can't shoot us all." Now, that was a Facebook thing. It was the funniest thing ever. And within maybe a week, he had 1 million people signing up saying, yes, let's do that. They can't shoot us all. Let's get them aliens. And so the guy is shocked by this. He's like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And so he said, all right, let's do it. Let's raid Area 51. Let's do it. Naruto style. I was like, I'm going to that. And I'm going to be one of those people running at top speed as fast as I can possibly run with a camera on, with an eye camera on, as military personnel is shooting down people. And I'm like, we can do it. We're almost there. Let's get them aliens. So the military comes out and says there are people in Area 51, and they say, look, don't play with us. We will murder you. They didn't say it in those terms, but it was clear, don't test us. They were very clear. They were very overt. Don't play with us. We will defend this space relentlessly. Don't test our will. The guy for the Area 51 thing says, yeah, let's not test their will. These guys seem serious. We don't want them to shoot us. Now, Area 51 was put on the map by Bob Lazar. Bob Lazar, nobody even knew what Area 51 was at a certain point. Bob Lazar comes out and says, there are aliens in that base. And he tells the reporter, he says, look, they're going to be flying craft on this particular day, and let's be out there so we can see it. And what do you know? They were flying and testing craft on that day. It's put on the media in Las Vegas, and it goes all across the world. Oh my God, Bob Lazar. Now, people took issue with Bob Lazar's story. And they were like, well, this guy, how can this guy know? The problem is there are elements of that story that are just true and that are weird, to say the least. But the Area 51 thing and the aliens at the Area 51 base is from Lazar. Nobody even knew what it was. Lazar was working there at one point, and Lazar comes out and says some wild things in regards to the ship, the craft, and those type of things that he's saying are being kept at that base. So Lazar he's still out. He's done a movie recently. And doing the movie recently, you get to see Bob Lazar's life and all this other stuff. You get certain cooperation in regards to proving that Lazar was working there, because the person who was hiring people for the base remembers Lazar in regards to getting him that job. So there's certain elements of the story that is on point, especially with the news that has been coming out with UFOs and everything else from the New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, CNN, and all these other places that have been talking to various people that was either in the military or the Black Budget Project was being run by Harry Reid. So, there, you didn't know about that. I'm going to have to do an entire story on that one.
You should.
Harry Reid was running a story called, it was ATIP. Harry Reid was dealing with it. ATIP was a Black Budget Project by the U.S. government to study unidentified aerial phenomena. It went on for years. And it was outed by the New York Times and Politico at the exact same time. And being outed in this way, Luis Elizondo, the person who was running the program, quits and starts doing a media tour and starts talking to the press. All of this coincides with the videos that were released by the Pentagon. Initially, the Pentagon said we didn't release those videos, but then the FOIA request shows that the Pentagon did, in fact, legally release those videos. And in releasing those videos, three, one, the Nimitz, another one having to do with pilots watching a particular craft. But these stories deal with the USS Roosevelt, the Nimitz, and the pilots themselves who were in those airplanes that have literally come out and start talking to the press. Many of these pilots, or one of these pilots, Fravor, I think his name, was out there on 9/11 protecting our airwaves, our skies. These guys were pilots for like 20 years. And they come out and say, I was watching a craft. It was doing stuff that my ship couldn't do. And I have no idea what it is, nor do I believe it's us. This is across the board. This is not just one or two pilots. This is several. And at this point, you have the ship that was there. They said, yes, that's true. You have the people who were in those airplanes watching these exotic craft. They said it's true. You have the person who was charged, meaning Luis Elizondo, of the Black Budget program to look over those things. He comes out literally from the program itself and tells Aaron Brunette on CNN, when she asked him, do you think we're being visited? He said, based on my scientific observation, and there are many videos and there are many documents that you don't have access to, based on my scientific observation, based on evidence, yes, it's not us. Now, this is a bombshell. At a recent forum, I think it was called the Aspen Security Forum, one of the generals was asked, the same thing, he was a commander, I can't think of his name, but a commander was asked, he was like a head of Indochina or something like that, or Asia Pacific Fleet. This wasn't about aliens. They were there under a panel to talk about how do you curb the influence of China. All of these people were neocons. And one brave person that was there said, what about the aliens? Now, he didn't say it in those terms, but essentially, what about the UFOs? And everybody in there laughed. Everybody laughed. It's funny, despite the factors on the New York Times, Washington Post, Politico, Washington Post, ABC, all of the news organizations are covering this. These stories have been hitting the airwaves. There have been bombshells. The New York Times came out with a bombshell like a few months ago saying that it wasn't just one or two, but many pilots were seeing these things. The Navy even changes their protocols so people can tell stories of UFOs because they were being inundated. People were asking members of Congress. Members of Congress was asking the military, what about this stuff? This stuff has been hitting in the news. We have videos where we can see it. What about it? What about it? Donald Trump was being briefed. And then the question became, well, wait, was Donald Trump briefed the first time around? And if so, why does Donald Trump need to be briefed twice? And also, do you believe that the Navy would change their protocols just to change their protocols? Or were they doing it because so many people had said something about it to the point where it looked utterly absurd for the Navy to pretend as if such wasn't true when all of the evidence that was being released said it was? This is not, I found the documents somewhere in some kind of vault, and we think, no. These are military officials who've been with the military for years, full credibility, coming out of the shadows saying, yes, I was watching it. This is exactly what it was. And various quads. That person at the Aspen Forum, who was the commander, that admiral in charge of Asia Pacific, comes out and says, yes, for a finite period of time, there were UFOs in our skies. But that's all I'm going to say about that. I'm not going to go further. There's a way to announce it. What that means, though, is this admiral has just said, who's with the United States, that for a finite period of time, there were craft in our skies doing things that we could not do, I mean, our craft could not do, that we did not necessarily know what they were. That is a bombshell, and that's profound, because that is literally an admiral affirming that the videos were indeed true, and that what the Nimitz or the Roosevelt was experiencing was true. Nobody followed up and said, wait, are you talking about the Nimitz or are you talking about the Roosevelt? What are you talking about? What he's saying, though, is something. Our pilots have seen something in our skies. They're seeing it in multiple cases that are doing things that our ships can't do. Things that if a human being was in those ships, those people would be crushed. And they're saying, we have no idea what they are. Now, whether they're a national security threat or not, we don't know, because we don't know what they are. That admiral just confirmed. The Washington Post just confirmed. New York Times, all of these media organizations are confirming it. And that admiral literally just said, yes. That's profound. One or two things are true. It is either us or it's not.
Simple.
Yeah, right. Yeah. But both are profound.
Oh, yeah.
If it is us, then that means that there's a secondary tract of technology that expanded beyond what we currently have. And that it was so advanced in that sense that when one of our pilots saw it, they said, that can't be us. We have no idea what that is. Now, the fact of the matter is, there could be a quirk of science of sorts that these guys have a breakthrough that even our scientists, if they saw it, would understand it. But looking at it from that particular point, looks like something dramatically exotic. The Blackbird, or even the stealth fighter, was like 10 years ahead of anything that was out. Well, what does it look like when technology exponentially expounds upon itself? And I can tell you this. Some of the information that was released, it showed that the United States government was studying exotic physics, things like, invisibility, warp drive, various weird propulsion, and that type of thing. Those were things that were released through FOIA requests. I guess I'm making the point that if there was a small breakthrough in technology, let's say electromagnetic propulsion, let's say gravitics, electrogravitics, whatever. If there was a small breakthrough from the standpoint of a pilot looking at it, it may look entirely exotic, but it could be us. And I have to hold open that potential that it could be. Like, I can't just immediately say it's something else. By the same token, if it is not us, that is just as profound. That's just as profound. Both of those things are profound.
Yes.
So the raid on Area 51 thing comes in the context of that, where all of those things was taking place and hitting the media and everything else. And this guy was like, I'm going to raid Area 51. So still, after hearing Area 51 saying, we will murder you, don't test us, it became, all right, let's not do that. And it became a dance and a raid. So it is going to be a music concert that is going to take place in Nevada for Area 51. Right. So instead of having raid Area 51, they're going to have a music concert.
Rave.
Yeah, it's going to be a rave. Yeah, it's going to be an alien-themed rave instead. That's what it's become. So I want to go to that like nobody's business. And
I guess.
All right, guys, we are coming into the 7 p.m. That means that this voice that has been in your ear for the last 2 hours, unfortunately, sadly, is not going to follow you home at the end of this particular channel. And I know you're dramatically upset by that experience. And now you're like, oh, dude, go for another 10 hours. But at last, I have a wife that loves me and she wants me near. She can't be without me for a bit. And I have a radio station that is going to go to another show. So, guys, I want to thank you for listening to me for this particular hour, or for these 2 hours. This is WRWK, The Work FM. And again, if you're interested in underwriting this content and interested in what is being said with this particular channel, you don't get too many channels that deal with left-leaning, unabashed left-leaning politics. And if you're interested in maintaining this and making sure and allowing this channel to grow, and even if it's not my channel, even if you like, some of the other content, please consider underwriting WRWK 93.9 FM.
And you can always go to our website.
Well, that too. So, guys, I want to thank you, and you all be safe.
So he had to say no, but the idea stuck with him. And 10 years ago, when the company bought its own space, he took action.
One of the first things we did was we added solar to the roof. That directly ties into the electric needed to power the presses.
They later added 2 wind turbines to help power the graphics department and installed efficient lighting and air conditioning. Now there's even a rooftop garden with vegetables, flowers, and 3 beehives. The changes are good for the climate, and Kaufman says his customers appreciate them too.
People who care about the environment, they want to use a printer who's powering his presses with his own solar power on the roof and reusing and recycling everything they can.
Climate Connections is produced by the Yale Center for Environmental Communication. Learn more at yaleclimateconnections.org.